We're continuing to go over some information that you will need to make sure you are studying for our first major test on exploration. So take a look at the London Company. Quick reminder, this is an example of a joint stock company. And if you remember, this particular joint stock company funded the colony of Jamestown. Remember, these investors pulled all their money together in hopes that they would make a profit off of Jamestown. And it did pay off for them in the end, because we know Jamestown was primarily established by the English to make money, and they will. In the beginning, it didn't look good, but eventually they will, thanks to tobacco. You'll want to go back and look over Mayflower Compact. Of course, remember that deals with the Pilgrims, and of course, the significance of Thanksgiving. Let's see. Again, just because I'm skipping it doesn't mean you need to skip over it. I'm just trying to remind you of some things that students often forget about. Joint stock company is twice, so you can mark through this one because you already have it up here. Okay, that was just my typo mistake that I had it on here twice. West Indies versus East Indies. That just basically means don't get the two locations confused and what the two are known for. So West Indies, we know that is the area over in the Americas where you're going to have a lot of sugar being grown. Whereas in the East Indies, that is going to be over in the Asian world where we find spices. Okay, next I want to address a couple things about these colonies and settlements. So be very careful with all of this so that you don't get it confused, okay? What I tried to do is first start with the French, okay? And we have Quebec as their first French settlement over in the New World. They also settle Acadia, and then remember a lot of their actual lands that they settled both in the northern part of North America, which is where Canada is, and then the actual part of North America that we would call the United States, that is all referred to as New France. Now, I've showed y'all maps of this, in previous recordings. But look what happens when the English come in and take over. Acadia gets renamed by the English to be Nova Scotia. New France gets renamed by the English to be Canada. So that's why I have them across so that you know that these are the English names for what once was a French settlement or colony. Okay? All right, Jamestown, we know that that's an English colony. And again, they are primarily making money. That brings up this. The French were creating these colonies for money purposes. Okay, remember they start with fur and then later they'll switch to sugar when that becomes more profitable. So that's something that the French and the English have in common. The French settlements were for money reasons, and then we know Jamestown in particular was for money reasons. Okay, the New Netherlands and New Amsterdam, remember these are Dutch colonies, and we know that once the English take over, they rename New Netherlands to be New York, and then rename New Amsterdam to be New York City. You might want to, make a note of that if you printed this out or you're just jotting this down. Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay, if you remember, those are two English colonies. Already went over the similarities because you're connecting Plymouth to the Pilgrims over here, and you're connecting Massachusetts Bay to the Puritans. So I'm not going to, rehash that again, but just make sure you know some of the details about those two English colonies and coming for, or being established for religious freedom. That's the ultimate reason for those two colonies. So before I go to page 2 of this study checklist, I just want to make sure that I remind you, if you have any questions over anything on this list, that you send me a message again before 8:30 at night, and please ask your question and I will answer it for you before you actually take this test. This is page 2. You can see here years of exploration, very simple. We said 1450 to 1650. And remember, that's the 15th century through the 17th century, if I ask you about centuries. You've got your reasons for exploration. Don't forget about the Renaissance connection, which just basically means that the people that were exploring were of the Renaissance and they had that sense of curiosity and adventure about them. So that's the Renaissance connection I wanted you to make. Remember, other reasons for exploration we talked about. Other than that sense of curiosity and adventure, they're hoping to find wealth as well as land. We know that they're hoping to convert natural resources into goods that can be sold. And of course, they want to spread their Christianity. Okay. Now remember, there's also what we call the motivating factors for exploration, which we shortened to be 3 Gs. Okay, that was on the first page of this study checklist. So don't get that confused with the reasons for exploration. Okay. The new technology and where it came from. Remember, the Muslims had a lot of technology, and that will be shared with Europeans as far as how to have new navigation instruments. Okay. We also know that the Europeans are going to build better ships that can navigate those ocean waters, which makes exploration possible. Countries seeking the all-water routes, remember that's Spain and Portugal. And of course, Portugal is the one that finds it first. The trading with Japan. Remember, the one country in Europe that they felt comfortable trading with was the Netherlands or Holland, which means those are the Dutch people. So remember what they taught the Dutch and how the Dutch were able to make good money from their skills that they learned thanks to the Japanese. Look at where it says reasons for colonizing, and I want you to know the reasons that the Spanish colonized, the English, the French, and the Dutch. I mentioned a little bit of this earlier on the first page, but there were some things maybe I didn't tell you about the Spanish. Remember, French were colonizing for money reasons, okay? Jamestown for money reasons, but the Massachusetts Bay Colony and, of course, Plymouth, those were religious reasons. The Dutch, they were really not doing it for religious reasons. It was more about making money as well. And then the Spanish, remember, they were more about conquering the land and taking the land from whatever people were there. And then, of course, finding the riches. Go back in your notes and look over the reasons Jamestown almost failed as a colony. Remember, be careful not to confuse this with some of the early issues that the Pilgrims had at Plymouth. Remember, Jamestown almost failed because they were spending too much time looking for gold in the beginning. They were also made up of a lot of gentlemen who weren't willing to put in the hard work that it takes to get that colony set up properly. We also know that many of the colonists died very quickly from either disease, starvation, fighting with the natives in the area. So all of those reasons is why Jamestown almost failed. Remember, we said the Pilgrims struggled in the beginning mainly because of winter months and the fact that they just didn't know how to farm, so they didn't have enough food. So many of them starved. Okay, so that's only one thing they had in common with the people of Jamestown as far as, struggles with their colony in the beginning. So be careful again not to confuse the two. When you're studying triangular trade, make sure you go back and look over any of the countries that were involved. You're going to take 3 of them when you have triangular trade, but remember there's different versions of it. So that's why I included more than just 3 countries, because it depends on which triangular trade example you are looking at, okay? You're always going to have a country from Europe involved. You're always going to have Africa involved. The third part is either one of three different locations: Brazil in South America, the West Indies, or the American colonies. Okay, so one of those three is involved in the triangular trade. And then, of course, the other two are always. So remember that. Be able to describe all three parts, the first leg, the second leg, the third leg of the trip. So look over the details there. That chart that I gave y'all on the Columbian exchange, very important you look over what is being transferred from the old world, which is Europe, to the new world, which are the Americas. So look at the foods, look at the specific items that are not edible, and then vice versa, from the New World, which is the Americas, to Europe. So please go back and look over those items. And then the effects that exchange had not only on the Europeans as well as the Native Americans. There's positive and negative effects that are in that last section of your outline on the Columbian exchange. Remember, some of the positives being their diets are improving, which means overall health. So they're living longer thanks to this. The natives benefit from certain foods that they had been not exposed to before. They benefit from horses because now that they can get around a lot easier, and for battle purposes, that's going to be a benefit. Of course, the negative side, we know that the natives are going to be exposed to disease, which killed so many of them. We know that Europeans will also get disease from the natives, because remember I told you some of the men will have relations with the Native American women, and so disease can be spread that way. Finally, we went over the factors or characteristics of mercantilism. Again, you find that on the last section of your outline, section 10, basically the economic system, okay, at the time was mercantilism. And all profits go to the government. That's a key characteristic right there. Another factor or characteristic, countries are all about collecting as much gold and silver as they can. Another factor, they believe in having more exports than imports, which means they want to sell more than they want to buy, okay? So remember that, and that will help establish a favorable balance of trade. Another factor of mercantilism is colonies are very important because they supply raw materials to a mother country. So that's going to be important when it comes to mercantilism. Remember, this is the system that was in place in Europe at the time period we're studying. Later, it gets replaced by capitalism, which of course is what we have in the United States today, and many countries operate under capitalism, where you have private ownership. You can own your own land or business, so you can actually make profits instead of it all going to the government, which again is mercantilism. Okay? So I hope that helped explain some of this information. I'm going to remind you again, if you have any questions from either page of this checklist, to send me a message. I will also have a Zoom meeting for specific questions, if you have them, at 3:55 today. I'll have that in an announcement if you're watching this later than that. But that's for anybody who's at home that might want their questions answered very quickly. Then you can join us on Zoom, and that's what it's going to be for. Okay? All right. Good luck studying. And again, let me know if you have questions.